From ContainerDays Hamburg, this video is proudly presented by Dux IT.
My name is Kevin, and at AOE, me and my team, we are working with enterprises across a couple of different industries, and we help actually evolving their cloud-native maturity journey. And we see those organizations in basically all of their stages of the cloud-native maturity, and that's why I want to talk today about what we have experienced and observed in the last years, and where these companies actually have overestimated themselves, and why Kubernetes alone at the end doesn't make you cloud-native. And for that, I want you guys to help me a little bit with a small experiment, because, oh, that's very bright. I want you to participate in 2 polls during my talk because I'm very interested in how you might change your perspective on being cloud native in your organization. So let's do a quick hand signing. So who is consider his organization as cloud native? That's only 2. 3, 4. Okay. So, and who thinks there's quite a journey that you should address to be cloud native? Okay, cool. So the other ones are maybe still in between somewhere or just sleeping because of the nice meal. We do the same poll again after my talk, and I'm pretty curious how your reaction changes. So, but let's align with the official definition of being cloud native. The CNCF, they have a quite detailed definition of it, and as it's a really long definition, I try to compact it down to the bare essentials. So cloud native practices empower organizations to develop scalable, resilient workloads with loosely coupled systems across modern cloud environments. And that's still a huge sentence. But there's already something that we can see because we can see that cloud native is not just about Kubernetes and microservice. It is about empowering an entire organization by using modern technology and adopting a completely new mindset. And we can actually break down this definition to, we say, traits. 6 of them. It's scalability, resilience, agility, automation, observability, and portability. And the most important takeaway here is that these traits, they are not about the technology we are using, at least not only. Because all these traits, they empower the organization, because cloud native at the end is as much a mindset as it is a tool set. And here's actually the problem, because when we do cloud native maturity assessments with our customers, we see the same pattern again and again. When we talk to them first, more than 80% of these organizations, they claim to be cloud native. This is a quite different perspective on what I have seen here, so that means we have already quite a good idea on what is cloud native. When we measure the cloud native maturity at those companies, only a quarter of them actually reach an advanced stage. So most are stuck really at the basics. They have pipelines, they are in place, they run basic automation, but every team do their own stuff. Governance is completely missing, and cost guardrails or observability is not even in place or not really optimized. It looks very cloud native, but in the end it is not mature. And this is what we often see. We call it a Frankenstein platform. So it looks very impressive, but at the end it's a stitched together tool chain. So you have Prometheus here, Argo there, Helm, Terraform, everything is in place, but all kind of connected with duct tape. So under the hood, when you have a look into the details, it is fragile, it is inconsistent, and most of the time really expensive to operate. But hey, at least it's a platform, right? but probably not the one that you want to run your business on. And of course, this monster hasn't built by itself, because it was, at the end, was the organization that builds the platform, just like Victor Frankenstein. Our customers, they really had good intentions. They wanted speed, they wanted innovation, they wanted modern technology. But without an alignment in the organization, it's just stitching together tools and pieces. So again, every team, they start adding their own services. Governance is an afterthought, if it's a thought at all. And the result is you have gained complexity instead of a consistent platform. And this is not Kubernetes' fault, which is actually what I hear a lot when people drive those problems. And this is also the reason why I want to talk about that today. So that was the metaphor. Now let's bring it back to the reality. Why does cloud native even matter? And the answer is very easy, because the traits that I just showed you, they can be directly translated into a business value. And this is how we actually earn our daily bread, right? So agility is not about deployments. Agility is about a faster time to market. Resilience is not about a self-healing system. With resilient systems, you gain customer trust. And automation and observability that don't just help us in operations, they really drive efficiency and cost optimization, which actually gives you budget for growth. So we need to ask ourselves, if cloud native maturity matters that much, how can we actually address that or measure it? And this is where the CNCF cloud native maturity model comes in, which is also referred to as CNMM. And the CNMM, it provides us a structured, let's say, framework or guideline that makes cloud native maturity visible. With this model, we can actually assess where you are on your journey today. And most important, you can define realistic next steps that deliver outcome to your business. And at this point, I want to make a quick disclaimer, because I am not speaking on behalf of the CNCF. What I am sharing today is our interpretation on the CNMM and how we are using it with our customers to actually assess their cloud native maturity. So while the model itself comes from the CNCF, everything that I show here today and how I frame it is based on our experiences. And before we dig a little bit deeper into the model, there's an important nuance from my perspective that I want to add. The CNMM itself, it doesn't define a perspective, but in reality, I find it very useful to distinguish two. And this is a platform and workload. So platform is everything about the infrastructure, about governance, about operations, and the workload is about applications, delivery, and developer experience. And why do we need to have a different view or perspective on them? This is because normally you have different teams in your organization that are actually driving outcome in those perspectives. So we should also have a different perspective on them. And there's also a very important part, it is about the context. Because maturity is really rarely uniform. So it will be differ between teams and units, and it will maybe also differ between microservices inside the same team or unit. And this is normal. But that's why I always recommend that you should assess your maturity by considering a perspective and a context of your organization. The model describes a couple of stages that are, or the organization is evolving when they are on their journey of being cloud native. And the very first one is the build stage. So the organizations, they start experimenting with pipelines, they start implementing Kubernetes, they start using their first workloads. And then automatically they start to switch their focus into a stable operations. They want to create repeatability. And then they head over to a scaling stage. So scaling means that practices do expand across the entire organization. So maybe a platform starts to emerge that are being used by other teams. Standards are shared across multiple units. And then at some point they start to improve everything. So you have continuous optimization in place. You care about cost efficiency, more about security, and you optimize your observability patterns. And adapt is then the really most advanced, most important stage where cloud native actually aligns directly with the business and the business outcomes and innovation. And here's also an important part because this is often misunderstood as a checklist, but you should see it as a journey. So not all aspects of your organization need to reach level 5. Some of them might even not be relevant for your organization. So you should not see it as a destination where you want to go. You should see it as a journey where you are at some point of that journey. The value really lies in that you guys understand where you are on that journey and use that to define the meaningful next steps out of your context. And here's a quick spoiler, because I haven't seen yet an organization reaching level 5 in the majority of their aspects. We haven't seen that yet. But these are probably not the organizations that are talking to us and wanted our help. So when we actually map the organizations we work with onto this journey, we can see a clear picture. In the majority of all their aspects, they reach something like 2.7, so quite in the middle. This means most of the companies, they can operate workloads, and some have maybe started to scale platforms, but really a handful can truly improve or even adapt business-wide. So the levels alone, they don't tell the whole story. Because you need to identify the capabilities that actually enable you to move forward and actually drive business outcome. And this is where the dimensions in the CNCF, come in. So each of those dimensions, they bring together a whole lot of aspects that needs to be evolved during your cloud native journey. So, for example, from teams that need to reorganize, how change is managed in your organization, to the tools that you are using and automating. Originally, the model just had the 4 pillars. You just see here the 4 dimensions, so people, process, policy, and technology. Later, the CNCF added a 5th one, which is business outcome. But in today's model, they have put business outcome right on the top of those pillars. And that's for a very good reason, because at the end of the day, all effort across those dimensions, they do only matter if they deliver a real business outcome to your organization. And when talking about business outcome, the CNMM doesn't tell you which business outcome you should pursue, because each organization defines its very own business outcomes, and that's really depending on their strategy. So for some companies, it might be a faster time to market. For other companies, it might be lowering the costs, or for your company, it may be something entirely else. But in practice, across the companies we work with, we see the 4 themes appear again and again, which is resilience, efficiency, agility, and innovation. And when you remember our 6 traits we just talked about earlier, they can be directly translated into those. So again, resilience is about fewer outages, so you increase your customer trust. With innovation, you drive ideas faster into production. And efficiency allows you to lower costs, which give you actually more budget for growth. So when you assess your maturity, you should not ask yourself, what tools do I need? You should ask yourself, how do they create value for my business? And this is where the CNMM actually gets really powerful. So let's have a look a little bit deeper into the dimensions. And the first dimension that is delivering an outcome to the business is obviously people, so you. The people who actually design, operate, and use the platform. You drive the business outcome. And to be cloud native, the people, they need to reorganize. So responsibilities might need to shift, and we definitely need to evolve skills. That's a change. And that's why, unfortunately, this dimension is often the hardest and slowest part of that journey. Because you can buy technology, but what you can't buy is a culture that needs to evolve. The process maturity is where companies can feel the first benefits, because you gain faster releases. You have safer changes, less errors, and you get a better incident handling, which also gains customer trust. So process is about concrete practices like automating, like testing, change reviews, or maybe incident runbooks, so that people and technology can move forward together without a friction. And policies. Yeah, policies are often misunderstood as bureaucracy. But in cloud native, the goal is completely different. In cloud native, your goal should be that policies become a guardrail. So instead of slowing down the teams afterwards, they provide clarity, reduce risk by being automated, integrated, and completely invisible until you need them. And this is also speeding up the entire organization, because policies are just getting part of your life cycle and of your culture. And last but not least, we have technology. And technology is the most visible part. We have Kubernetes clusters, we have service meshes, we have observability stacks. But what really matters is not just having the tools, it is how consistently and sustainably you are using them in your organization. So remember the Frankenstein platform that I just showed you guys. So this one is looking very advanced, but it's inconsistent and has a real lack of maturity underneath. So we have seen those dimensions, but they are very useful for framing. But they are still very abstract. So we can, so the CNMM, they define aspects. There are 24 in total. And we have different aspects in each of those dimensions. And the CNMM gets very powerful when we have a look into those aspects, because then this is where it gets concrete. You can actually ask yourself, how do we handle, for example, developer agility or security and policy today? And you can see where you are on that journey. So you might be level 4 in CI/CD because you've invested a lot in automation, but you might be still in level 2 change control, which is also under the process dimension. And this is because each of those aspects, they have their own journey. You can't define a maturity on your whole organization or project. Let's take an example with the CI/CD aspect under the process dimension. And at level 2, we see organizations that deployments are manually, they are ad hoc, they are often error prone. And at level 2, they start using CI/CD pipelines. So they build automation and they gain repeatability. At level 3, you might adopt GitOps practices. So your deployments getting standardized across teams. And at level 4, here comes the advanced stages. You probably have a metric-driven release process. So for example, you implement the DORA metrics, so you have automated rollbacks based on your observability. Or maybe you implement even advanced SRE practices. And at level 5, you come to a point where CI/CD is actually an enabler for the business. So you have on-demand and safe feature rollouts. You use feature flags, canary releases, A/B testing, and all directly aligned and tied to the business. So you have a really fast innovation and a really fast feedback loop to evolve. Let's take another example, teams and decentralization under the people dimension. At level 1, everything is centralized. So the IT acts as a real bottleneck, and developers, they have very little autonomy, which is hopefully no one of you experienced today. At level 2, we see a separation in dev and ops teams, but they still have a lot of friction because they have so much handovers and different responsibilities. They are not working together. And at level 3, we actually start emerging cross-functional teams. So the teams start owning their service from end to end. And at level 5, the teams, they are completely autonomous with a self-service that is directly aligned to business outcomes and empowering them to adapt very quickly and to innovate very quickly. So you have seen that there are a lot of aspects, and they are quite hard to break down when you have a look at the official CNMM website. That's why we have visualized the entire journey interactively. So you can feel free to explore that afterwards. You can zoom in, you can follow each aspect. There's also a link in there which points to the official CNMM definition. And so this is where the model really gets practical, and you can use that for you to actually assess your organization. And here's one important note, because the order of those dots inside each level, they have no official meaning. Because the CNMM does not prescribe what should come first, but we have ordered them in a way as we have seen it in practice evolving. So just as a side note. In the last slide, I put a QR code where you can actually link to the website where you can access this view. And another quick disclaimer, you should not use it on a mobile phone because it's just too huge. There's also something that I want to leave you with. With that, all that having in mind that you just learned about cloud native maturity, you should make that part as a change cycle of your organization. So you should always first assess where you are today and use the CNMM and the aspects to get a really clear picture on where you are now and what is the next step. And this is about identifying where increasing the maturity would actually give you the most business outcome. And this is what you should adapt next. And third, obviously, repeat that process. You should come back to this regularly because your organization changes, your team is evolving, and your journey is evolving. So that's how you avoid actually having maturity as a buzzword and instead turn it into a process of your organizational change. There are 3 takeaways that I want to give you. The first one is that maturity is actually not a checklist. It is about developing your capabilities. Which leads me to the next one. Do not see this as a destination, as a goal. It is a journey. Not everyone needs to reach level 5. It depends on what your business needs are. And the third one, it is outcome over tools. So technology only matters if they create a real business value for us. So coming back to my original poll, I'm interested now in who has the feeling that you have now another view or a different view on cloud native maturity. Yeah. I think the reason is that you guys already have a good understanding of cloud native maturity. That was what my initial poll has told us. Yeah, and here's the QR code as I promised. If you want to have a starting point, you can head over to cloudnativescore.io. This is an initiative from AOE and Kubernetes. You'll find the interactive journey that I just showed in my talk there, and you can also do a quick self-assessment on to actually benchmark your organization's maturity. So yeah, thanks for listening, and if you want to have a chat with me, you find me at B30, right beside of the entrance to the networking area. And yeah, we are also giving away 2 Raspberry Pi kits if that's interesting for you. I don't want to have a chat about DORA metrics here in this room, but the DORA has created some metrics to actually measure how DevOps and release cycles are improving. So release cycles, for example, to how fast do I need to deploy a change into production, for example. And there are a couple of metrics. You can implement them and you can directly see where you might need to evolve your process and your change. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next one is a good one. In your cloud native journey, how do you deal with the majority of devs and middle managers resisting change? Change management.
Yes.
Yeah.
Remember, I said people is often the hardest and slowest part. And this is one of the reasons. You need to actually onboard the business very early and make them clear what business outcomes would be gained when we implement cloud native maturity, or if you improve cloud native maturity. Remember the 6 traits I just showed you? They can be directly related to business outcomes. So this is something that you should tell your managers. And I think there's also an important part because you need to train your managers. They also need to increase their knowledge about cloud native, what this means, that this is not a buzzword, because this makes you competitive on the edge to other companies.
Thank you. Next one, how to measure if increasing cloud native level improves the business outcome?
I'm not sure if I understand the question right. So my interpretation is that how do we measure after level 5? Is that my correct understanding?
I would say so, but not only, I think. So,
Yeah.
so when going through the journey, like how would you measure? That's my understanding of the question.
Oh, how do you measure if it actually creates a value for the
Yes.
business? Oh, okay, this is.
I would suggest that's.
Yeah, this makes sense. Yeah, and this is also a very hard question because it really depends on what business you're driving, right? So the DORA metrics are obviously one tool that can be used to measure the outcome to the business, because when you have faster release cycles, it's obviously an outcome for the business. But there are also exact facts like efficiency that drives cost optimization. So you have lower costs to operate your business, to operate your platform. It really depends on the organization and on the business. But I'm happy to have a chat about that afterwards.
Great, thank you. What is the typical overhead for measuring CN in a company?
Not that much, because it is much at the beginning, because you need to get a clear picture on where you stand. So at the beginning, it's an invest. But when you have it as part of your change life cycle, it just becomes normal and gains speed, because you can focus on the right topics and not focusing on topics that do not optimize you as a business. So overall, you actually have less effort than not doing it.
Cool. Last question, at least for now. How would you recommend to work cross-functional teams with external vendors and internal DevOps? That's a mean one.
Yeah. When I understand it correctly, that means that you have cross-functional teams where external vendors are also part of that team. And to be honest, you should not have a different perspective on the member of those teams, because it is one team, one cross-functional team that is delivering an outcome. So it shouldn't matter if it's from another vendor or if it's my team. And internal DevOps, the question is what is meant by that. So maybe it's about the platform that is supporting everything. And they should closely work together. But I can also have a chat about that at B13. So the person who has raised this question can maybe explain a little bit more the details about it.
Wonderful.
Yeah?
These were all the questions.
Okay.
But you're still around, also for the next couple of days, so there is still enough time if something pops up later. I would say a very last warm and loud round of applause for Kevin.
Thank you for listening.
From ContainerDays Hamburg, this video is proudly presented by DAX IT.